Good afternoon, everyone, and we'll now start, and welcome to everyone. And it's good to see you here, and I understand that you work very hard on all the projects and assessing the properties. And without further ado, we will start. Number 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest and any other items associated. So is there anyone who has a pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will continue on to our discussion items. And our first one, 4.1, the Heritage Permit Application 44 Teresa Street, which is a demolition, reconstruction of the front porch, the shed dormers, the additions, repair or replacement of windows and doors, and the demolition of the detached garage. And we will hear comments from our planner, Jessica Vera, and Jessica will provide a brief presentation. Members, hold your questions until after our applicant speaks. Jessica, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, 44 Teresa Street is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and it's located in the Victoria Park area Heritage Conservation District. The proposed work includes the demolition and reconstruction of the existing front porch, the addition of 2 shed dormers on the roof of the dwelling, the repair or replacement of windows and doors on all of the facades of the home, and the demolition of the rear detached garage and creation of additional parking spaces. In reviewing the merits of this work, it's intended to allow for a vacant and currently derelict single detached home to be used as a functional and maintained duplex. Further, the shed dormers will not be prominently visible, and the work to the porch, windows, and doors will maintain the existing appearance of the dwelling. In addition, it uses appropriate material to the area. And finally, it complies with the policies and guidelines of the HCD plan. That's all for my presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. And now I'd like to call on Michelle Thack, Think Form Architecture and Interiors. Is Michelle here?
Through the chair, they are present just to answer questions if required.
Thank you, and I'd like to remind you that you have 5 minutes to present, and also, because it's very difficult to hear in this conference area, please lead and lend yourself into the mic when you're talking. Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Michelle. I'm from Think Form Architecture. I'm the intern architect at the firm. So we did not have a presentation today, as mentioned to Jessica, but we are very happy to answer any questions that you may have for the project moving forward.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Do you have any summary statements to make about the project?
Of course.
It's okay if you don't.
So I guess what the main question is being asked is, why was this scope of work completed, or why is it necessary? And the main objective of this project is to restore the structural integrity, the architectural capacity, and the livelihood of the home. Presently, the home is unsightly and proposes a safety risk to those situated in the building. It does not carry the same notion as Queen Victoria Park as a part of history based on its poorly maintained and unlivable quarters. The best solution to ensure the home is well maintained and that the heritage is preserved is by working with the owners and instilling ownership pride, which our client has. With the support of the committee, the owner, and our firm, we continue to contribute for making this neighborhood an impressive and a more interesting one.
Thank you. And now, committee members, is there a question for the delegation? Ilona?
Yes, I have a question in regards to the design. Firstly, I want to commend you for the way that you have gone about and are trying to preserve the heritage of the property. I think that's so important, especially when it's in a heritage district. The question I had was, you've proposed to put in dormers on the top, but yet there's a space in the back where you could have put an addition on the back as well. Is there a reason why the dormers were chosen as opposed to building out the back of it?
Of course. So when we were thinking of designing for the heritage, we felt that by expanding the dormers, you would get more of clear sight from a higher perspective, as well as because the attic is already existing, it wouldn't be necessarily changing too much to the building. So we thought that by just altering the ceiling height of the building, it would help the attic be a livable space, pretty much. Because if we were to extend from the back, it wouldn't have as much of a precedence, it wouldn't have as much of a different view than what would be presented on the dormer. And also, I feel like the dormer would definitely add a little bit, would boost the significance of the home as well and the value of the home.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the delegation? Well, thank you very much. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
And now we'll have staff respond to any questions.
Okay, for sure. Thank you so much.
Questions for Jessica? Seeing none, then I will call for a motion to move the recommendation. And the recommendation in the staff report goes like this: that pursuant to Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HPA 2023 V003 to permit the demolition and reconstruction of the front porch with minor design changes, the addition of 2 shed dormers on the roof of the dwelling, the repair or replacement of multiple windows and doors on all facades, and the demolition of the rear yard detached garage and creation of a rear parking pad to accommodate additional parking spaces. And at the property municipally addressed as 44 Teresa Street be approved as outlined in Development Services Department Report DSD 2023-189 in accordance with the supplementary information submitted with the application and subject to the following conditions: that a material sample board be submitted to Heritage Planning staff for review prior to the issuance of a building permit, that the vegetation in the front yard be maintained as a visual buffer where feasible, and that final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by Heritage Planning staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. So who would be willing to move the recommendation? Moved by Peter. Do I need a seconder, Mariah? No. So, all those in favor? So that is carried unanimously, and this gives consent from the committee. It can be processed under delegated approval authority following the committee meeting. Our next item, 4.2, is a notice of intention to designate 181 Frederick Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, DSD 2023-154, And for this one, Diksha Chowdhury, our staff member, will provide a brief presentation and overview. Members, please hold your questions for staff until the applicant speaks to the application, if there is a delegation here, which I don't see. All right then, Diksha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the next item on the agenda is a notice of intention to designate 181 Frederick Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The front facade of the house is the image you can see on the right-hand side. The subject property, also known as the Snyder House, is located close to the intersection of Frederick Street and Lancaster Street East. The house was built circa 1910 in the craftsman style of architecture. This style of architecture really gained popularity at the start of the 20th century in response to the elaborate Victorian Georgian homes that were being built at the time, with one of its key characteristics being the modest build with some decorative elements, which can be seen in this house in the tapered brick columns, the rusticated stone foundation, and the window and door detailing. In the context of Kitchener, the Snyder House was one of the many craftsman cottages that were built on Frederick Street between 1900 and 1910. Due to the development of the city over the years, today it is one of the last remaining craftsman cottages on Frederick Street. The property is currently listed as a non-designated property of cultural heritage value on the city's municipal register. An HIA was required as part of a site plan application that was submitted to the city in 2019. The HIA confirmed that this property has design, historical, and contextual value, and recommended that it should be designated under Part 4. The applicant is proposing that the existing house and the carport will be preserved in situ and no alterations will be done. It will continue to be used as an office by its current owner. The designation was included as one of the conditions of site plan approval, and staff are now working towards fulfilling that condition, which is why you have this motion before you today. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Diksha. And now, seeing no delegations, are there any questions or comments for staff? Sure. Is it Natalie?
What is the current use of the building?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's used as an office by the owner, Rome Transportation, I believe.
Are there any other questions, comments? I noticed in the report that there was a possibility of a plaque. And I realize we're dealing with intention to designate. However, I'm wondering if in the further discussions with the applicant, you might encourage a plaque about the property. There's a lot of information there, and especially since it pertains to the Snyder person who contributed to the hydropower system in Ontario. And I'd just like to have that recorded in the minutes and with staff and have it considered. I wonder, staff, how do you react to that?
So through you, Madam Chair, if a notice of intention is approved by council and the designating bylaw that accompanies that is passed, we do have a plaque that is supposed to be installed on any sort of designated houses under Part 4. There was no condition, I believe, in the site plan application that asked for a separate plaque to be installed, so I would have to have a chat with the owner, and I can follow up with you regarding that.
Right. I just think it's really important for this information to be available, and I would think that this is a highly traversed area by pedestrians, so it would add to the interpretation of the site. So if you can work on that, I'd appreciate it. Are there? Yes, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just wondered if you could tell us what prompted the designation of this property.
So through you, Madam Chair, a site plan was submitted in 2019. It related to the construction of a 10-story condominium right next to 181 Frederick Street. As part of that application, the requirement for HIA was requested because this property is listed. Through that process, it was confirmed that this property has design value due to its craftsman style of architecture. It has historical value due to who occupied that home, and contextual value being that it is one of the last remaining craftsman cottages on Frederick Street. And so based on that assessment, we did come to the conclusion that it should be designated under Part 4.
So the application to develop the property then is stalled or stopped?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, they are in the process of fulfilling other site plan approval conditions. This was just one of them. So we are working with the applicant to sort of fulfill all of the other conditions that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Alona.
So how will the house be used after it's been designated? I think I might have read that it's going to be used as an office. Is the designation also going to be applicable to the inside of the home? Is it going to be preserved, even if it is used as an office?
Through you, Madam Chair, the house will continue to be used as an office, which is its current use. Any interior elements will not be, they're not a part of the designation, so we're focusing only on the exterior of the home. Thank you.
Is there any way to include the interior?
Through you, Madam Chair, they were not identified. They were included within the HIA, but they were not identified as heritage attributes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll now go to the recommendation in the staff report that pursuant to Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 181 Frederick Street as being of cultural heritage value or interest, as outlined in Development Services Department Report, DSD 2023-154. Who would like to move this? Councillor Chapman. Thank you. All those in favor? Seeing it's carried unanimously, it will now go to Council for approval. Council, May the 8th, 2023. Welcome, Robin. We're now on item 4.3, notice of intention to designate 73 Shanley Street under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, DSD 2023-170. And for this one, our staff, Jessica Vera, will provide a brief presentation. Jessica?
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, this is a notice of intention to designate 73 Shanley Street, which is located on the intersection of Shanley Street and Moore Avenue within the Mount Hope/Bright Up neighborhood cultural heritage landscape. The designation would recognize the subject property for its design and physical, historical and associative, and contextual value. In terms of its design value, the home demonstrates it's an early representative example of a single detached dwelling constructed with influences from the Queen Anne Revival architectural style, built circa 1905. The home also demonstrates significant craftsmanship in the detail and unique features found within it, which includes the steeply pitched and irregular roof lines, cornices, gables, rectangular windows, balconies, a wraparound veranda with decorative posts, railing brackets, and rusticated stone foundation. In terms of its historical and associative value, the original owner of the property was a local grocer and Twin City Trades Labor Council member named David Mather. Further, there's an attached grocery store, or former grocery store, to the home, which provides an understanding of the changing scale of neighborhoods. Local corner stores like the grocers were the usual in neighborhoods like this until the introduction of the bigger box stores that we're used to today. So it provides kind of that understanding of how neighborhoods have changed and how our community has grown. Finally, in terms of contextual value, it's located within an early and significant residential neighborhood, which retained much of its original character, hence its CHL designation. I would also like to note that this was an owner-initiated movement. There was no associated site plan with this. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Just specifically about the neighborhood, like the Mount Hope neighborhood and Shanley Street, there's quite a lot of heritage buildings I would suggest like qualify as that. Is there any future plans of designating the areas like specifically, or is it just individual houses for now?
Garrett, would you mind? I don't believe there's any intention to, but...
Through you, Madam Chair, there isn't any intention right now. As part of the Growing Together work that we're completing, and which is under review for all of our Central Station MTSAs, we are looking at implementing parts of the cultural heritage landscape. So we will be addressing heritage matters for the Bright at Mount Hope firstly through that program. And that's planned for December of this year.
Thank you, Garrett. Any other comments? I think we should send a letter of commendation to this owners in volunteering and coming forth to ask that their property be designated. This is marvelous to see. I would now like to turn to the recommendation in the staff report. Pursuant to Section 29 of Ontario Heritage Act, the clerk be directed to publish a notice of intention to designate the property municipally addressed as 73 Shanley Street as being of cultural heritage value or interest, as outlined in Development Services Department Report DSD 2023-170. And I'm looking for someone to move the recommendation. Ilona, thank you. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor? It is approved unanimously, and it will go to Council May the 8th. And now we come to the status updates. Bill 23 Municipal Heritage Register Review. This is what our workload is all about with all the properties to be reassessed, which are now listed. And I wonder if staff have any items to share or comments about the process, what they're involved in. I know that Jessica has been spending a lot of time in the archives, looking and reevaluating all those reports, and I'm sure Diksha has as well. So Diksha or Jessica, would you like to comment to our committee, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I did just want to briefly touch on anticipated items for our June meeting in regard to the Bill 23 work that we're doing. As you mentioned, Diksha and I have been spending a lot of time in the archives right now, updating we're aiming for the first 10 assessments, or reviewing the first 10 assessments that were done by your field evaluations. So we'll be bringing updated statements of significance with the additional material and information that we found to the June meeting for review. The next meeting following that we're aiming for a minimum of another 10 with consideration to the other workload that we have to accommodate as well. June meeting will also be assigning new properties for the next round of field evaluations. So we'll be issuing the folders back with updated statements or new statements of significance for the new properties.
Thank you, Jessica. Diksha, would you like to add something?
Through you, Madam Chair. No, I think Jessica covered it all.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions about the process or what staff have shared on the part of our members? Yes, Peter.
Thanks. I wonder if you could tell me, so the updated statements of significance will come back to the committee. How long between that event and when the proposal to designate them would come to the committee?
Through you, Madam Chair, we'd be hoping to then bring the NOIDs at the following meeting, so there's no July meeting, but then we would be bringing them hopefully to August.
Okay. So it will be kind of a cycle of 10 after that at every committee meeting? Wow.
Yeah, we intend to continue this on a rolling basis, so there'll be continuous updates following this point.
Great, look forward to it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any comments about the experience of reviewing and assessing the properties? I wonder, did it help you get to know different parts of the city? Myself and Des were working out in the area of the Huron Road, Trustler area, which is the rural area. And I hadn't realized how much traffic, cross-town traffic there is. And it was a bit of a challenge where to park the car, where to stand, and how to look at the properties and do your assessments. So it will be interesting to see what staff comes up with and the recommendations you have for those properties out in the rural area of the city. Are there any other comments? Seeing none then, we'll go on to our information item, Heritage Permit Application Tracking Sheet. And I'm assuming staff, you may have comments on this.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, I just think it's the tracking sheet that's attached to each agenda each month. Yep.
Very good, thank you. Are there any other items? I realize that we cannot talk about properties without them being on the agenda, but are there any other comments or interests or things you would like for future agenda to be discussed? Seeing none, it looks like we have completed our agenda. So thank you very much for coming today. And we'll see you in June.